Good afternoon and welcome to the Hibs Observer Thursday briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined for the first time in far too long by Matty Fairnie from the Long Island podcast. We're ahead in a bit to Hibs return to action at home to Dundee this weekend. But first, going to touch on Grant Hanley, part of the Scotland squad that has qualified for the World Cup for the first time since 1998. What a week it'll have been for him. First of all, folks, just as always, though, a wee quick message for our sponsor, the Hibs Observer. Is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. So start your search today. And actually, before we get into things, folks, just while I've got you, before anybody gets sick of listening to me in these first couple of minutes, we are running our Black Friday sale on the Hibs Observer. It's back again for this year, where you can get 12 months of our Hibs journalism for £12. So obviously that works out at just £1 a month for all our content on the website. So that includes the latest Hibs news, exclusive interviews, features, tactical analysis, everything you can imagine as it comes to Hibs and this season, full match day coverage. If you have a wee look on the website, you can find an article there from our editor, Patrick, who explains that in much better and more detail than I just have as to why, if you're a Hibs fan, we feel is absolutely worth for you to sign up to the Hibs Observer. So do check that out. But in the meantime, Matty, good to have you back. How you been getting on?
Very good. I just say £12 for a year's worth of subscription is great value. I say that as a subscriber myself. That what a deal.
Thank you.
Definitely take up. Would 100% recommend it as essential reading for Hibs fans.
Straight from the horse's mouth, that brown envelope is on its way to you,
Nice
Matty. Don't worry about that. No, thank you. We do appreciate that, absolutely. So let's get to it. Again, Hibs back this weekend, but we cannot start anywhere other than Scotland qualifying for the World Cup. Grant Hanley, part of that, and he has been part of it for a long time, even since before he joined Hibs in the summer. But obviously, a great moment for him. And I was just in general terms, I was just kind of thinking the day after the game as to what that feeling must be like. As I think when when young boys are, girls as well, growing up, aspiring to be a footballer in Scotland, it's probably to represent your country at a World Cup is, probably the one shared ambition across the vast majority of all those kids when they're growing up, looking to be footballers. Because obviously, depending where you're from, ambitions to play for different clubs, but that's the one thing that kind of sort of binds every young hopeful in the country. And so to be part of achieving that, and I think especially as well in this country with the whole narrative about how long it's been, the sort of weight hanging over the international team and how much football is just kind of woven into the fabric of the country. I just can't imagine what that feeling must have been like for Grant Hanley and the rest of the Scotland squad.
I think for Hanley in particular, and for the experienced ones in the squad, you can imagine it probably meant a bit more because I would have thought that a lot of them would have thought their chance would have passed them by, and especially how the game went. There would have been moments within the game that they were thinking this isn't going to happen. So for the game to end the way that it did in that fashion, I don't know. I think there's only one other footballing moment that I can think of as a Hibs fan that supersedes that one in terms of status, which is obviously 2016. But it just looked incredible, and you can imagine like Grant Hanley and all the rest of them will be walking on clouds for a long time to come.
Yeah, you can imagine. It was good for him, I think, to come back in and put in a really good performance as well, because he got a bit of stick after Greece at the weekend. I think some of it justified it. I think even he'd say that himself. I don't think he was anywhere near his best. So then to get the call at the last minute as well to come back in for this game and then put on the performance that he did, it shows he's made a stern stuff. But I think we knew that already, didn't we?
I think the thing with Hanley that people forget, so when he signed for Hibs, there was a bit of a mixed reaction to it. Everybody was over the moon. I thought it was clear that he was going to be a good addition to the squad, certainly for the level that we're at. But a lot of the time when he'd been called up to Scotland before, he hadn't necessarily been playing first team football regularly. So you have to kind of almost put his international performances into that context. But to come in, like you say, out the cold on Saturday, no, what day was it? Tuesday.
Tuesday.
I have no idea what day. I'm so out of sorts this week. On Tuesday, like you say, it's short notice. Like he's not expecting to start the game. Suter pulls out and Hanley goes in, and you would never know that he wasn't prepared to go right from the word go. He was an absolute colossus in the game.
Yeah. I wrote a piece about him yesterday and about his kind of Scotland career today, and I think you've kind of said there about the kind of reaction to him signing for Hibs, and because there's maybe the sort of wider perception around him probably just stems a bit from, I think he's maybe suffered a wee bit in the national team setup, and that he's one of those guys who's been around it for so long, and he was part of some. But no, I'm not pinning this on him, obviously, but some pretty big collective disappointments over the years. And then I think he didn't get a cap, I think, from it was almost 3 years to the day between 2018 and 2021. And that was extended a bit because of, fixtures were postponed by COVID, and he had a lot of injury troubles in that time. Whereas if he hadn't, he probably will still have played. But it was a long time for somebody to be out of the picture on the international scene and then to get recalled back in. And I think he's maybe, as I said, they're sort of suffered in that sense at times, because I think with the Scotland squad and supporting it, and it's understandable. There's always this kind of, I think, big clamour for new faces, for new guys, for someone for it to be freshened up. And there's a kind of perception that Steve Clarke has been overly loyal to certain players. And I think even when people don't name Hanley specifically, you can kind of think, well, that's one of the ones that they're probably referring to. So there is that kind of clamour at times for freshness and for new guys to come in. And I think, do you think maybe Hanley, who is, I think he's had his ups and downs like everybody else, but I think generally he's been a really solid performer for Scotland, but he's maybe suffered from that perception a wee bit, I would say. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Aye, definitely. And I think you're always judging him at international levels. You have to consider the players that he's up against as well. He tends to be up against international class strikers, which he's no facing week in, week out. But definitely that familiarity breeding contempt issue.
Yeah.
It's not just Hanley. I mean, there's a few players in that Scotland squad. In fact, the manager himself suffers from it. I would say that people do sort of strive for change, and they want the sort of shiny new thing rather than sticking with the old thing. But what Hanley has, and a lot of the squad have now, that I think Clarke has almost sort of deliberately done, is build up that sort of international experience. There's a lot of caps within the squad now. So when we were going into a game like Tuesday nights, it's not like we've got people who are brand new to the international scene there. There's people who have been over the course. They've had the disappointments, they've had the highs. They know what it's all about. And there's players in there that have qualified for tournaments, and that's him done another one. So I think that loyalty that Clarke shows to the players, although it gets him some criticism, I think there's a method to the madness with it.
Yeah, there is. Aye, I think it's been hard. I think it has been maybe hard to see that at times for all of us, when if maybe results aren't hadn't been going well. I think we went through various dips here and there, and then you think, well, why is he not changing it? Why is he not bringing new faces in? But I think kind of all of that is washed away by what happened on Tuesday night, and it's a pretty big vindication of how he's handled things over these last few years. So now I think the only thing left really is to go and make a good show of it at a major tournament, which is coming up next summer. So you'd imagine, Hanley is in a pretty strong place to be included in that squad next year. He's been playing well for Hibs. He seems to have put those injury problems, kind of touch wood, that he had a few years ago, that's behind him. He seems to be over all that. But I mean, there's another couple in the Hibs squad who will be harbouring ambitions to join him in that squad. Obviously, Kieran Bowie's had a taste of it. He was called up for friendlies at the start of June, and then he was involved in, I think it was the September squad. I think he had a couple of minutes against Belarus.
He did that at the end.
And then Josh Mulligan came in to replace, I can't remember who was injured, but he certainly came in for somebody. Didn't play, but he got the experience. He's plenty of caps for the under-21s. I think some people were maybe a wee bit surprised when he wasn't brought in. I think when Lennon Miller dropped out, I think Clark went for Andy Irving and Connor Barron to come in instead of, but which again, can debate the merits of that another day. But just in terms of those two, maybe come to Bowie first. I think he's had a taste of it now. Bowie, he had a really good start to the season. He sort of exploded exploded into this new season with that goal against Partizan. And I think it was even above that. I think some of his performances in those European games looked really, really strong, really promising. He's not hit those heights quite again since. He's had a few up and down displays, a few poor ones, a few good ones in there as well, a bit of inconsistency. But I think him watching that the other night, it's such an added incentive to rediscover your best form if you think there's a chance of putting yourself in contention for that World Cup squad next year. Because I mean, when it comes to the forward line, it's there's plenty of guys who are in and around it, but I think it's hard to say that there is an out-and-out main man as a striker. I think it speaks to that fact is that you could probably get a random assortment of Scotland fans and ask them who do you think should be first choice striker, and I think there'd be a fair mix of answers is what you would get there. So there's a chance there for Bowie, isn't there? He is an experienced. Clark has tended to go with experience. As you said, he's as in how he's built that up over the years. But there is a chance there for him, isn't there? If he can get back to his best over the next few months and see what happens.
Definitely, I think if you're Kieran Bowie and probably Josh Mulligan as well, you've already tapped on David Gray's door and said, just give me as much game time as you can give me because I want to go improve myself. This is like an opportunity of a lifetime for them. There's no guarantees that will qualify again given Scotland's record. So they've got however many months it is through from now to the squad being announced to go and make an impression. And I think if I was Kieran Bowie, I wouldn't be able to wait to get on the pitch on Saturday. Be sort of chomping at the bit just to kind of go in and show what I can do. I think it's a huge incentive for the pair of them. I don't think there's anybody else in the squad that we've got at the moment that's sort of in the frame for it. We had our phone in last night. One of the callers mentioned Josh Campbell, but I think it's probably too big a reach for Josh Campbell. But Bowie and Mulligan should certainly be looking at the opportunity in front of them, and what an incentive for the rest of the season to go and shine. Yeah,
I think Mulligan is. I mean, he's yet to make his senior international debut, but as I said, he's been in the squad. I think he's got the sort of versatility that I think can be attractive for tournament football because guys who can play multiple positions. I mean, because obviously once you go to the tournament, you can't. You've got the squad that you've got, and injuries can happen, unforeseen circumstances. So to have somebody in and around it potentially who can play in multiple roles could potentially be a benefit. And you think the trajectory that Mulligan's on, he seems to be really hitting his stride now. So I think people are only going to be talking about him more and more over the next few months if he keeps that up. I think it's probably at his age and his experience level potentially a big ask to break into that midfield when you look at some of the the options in there. You've got guys that play for Napoli, Aston Villa, Bologna. It's one of those. It's that area of the park where we're really blessed with a lot of options for the national team. So I don't know if it could come a wee bit too soon for Mulligan in that sense, but he does also offer you that option out on the right hand side. It's where would you place him?
So I think he's behind the players that are there at the moment. The guys that have got the jerseys, I think they, like you say, they're all playing at a good enough level that they're not easily displaced. But you never know who's going to get injured. Like between now and then, like we've seen it over the years. Like players that would be desperate to have available at a tournament, they get injured just before it, and somebody gets brought in. So it might be that Mulligan's maybe a bit of a wild card for it. But he's good enough to have put himself into consideration for the national team already, and the fact that he's been called up to a squad even though he never played. I think if he's on the manager's radar, all he can do is play as well as he can and stay there, so that if something does happen, he's ahead of the likes of Connor Barron or Andy Irvine in Steve Clark's mind. And if he plays well for Hibs, he will be there, because we're a high enough profile club. I think that players who play well for us do get noticed at international level. So I think he's in a good place for it, and all he can do is do his best for Hibs and see what happens.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. What about Nicky Cadden if he plays like last season? An outside chance, potentially?
I don't know if Nicky Cadden plays the way that Steve Clarke wants to play. I think that's the issue with Nicky Cadden. I'd love to see him get there, but I think what Nicky Cadden lacks a wee bit is that what you referenced with Mulligan, that all rounderness. Like, he's got a great cross on him, but he's not the best at beating a man. He's not the best defensively. Do you know? So he's. I'm not saying he's like a one-trick pony, but I don't think he's good enough at all the aspects of the game that he would need to be to get into the international squad. But I'd love him to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. From a Hibs perspective, that would be some turn up for the books. So yeah, do let us know in the comments, folks, who you feel, if you think Kieran Bowie or Josh Mulligan are a good shout of getting there to the World Cup next year. Just if you are tuning in live with us just now and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do us a wee favour, a wee turn, and hit the like and subscribe button. It's absolutely free to subscribe to the channel. It helps us continue to grow it, and it helps us to continue to bring you more of these videos. So that'd be much appreciated if you can get involved like that, and do keep sending in your comments for us as well. We'll endeavour to answer as many questions as we can between now and the end of the show. So now on to Strictly Hibs Matters. Domestic football is back this weekend. Hibs hosting Dundee at Easter Road, and quickly followed by a trip to Motherwell on the Tuesday night. It feels like two very winnable games, Matty. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, we've got a bit of a kind run of fixtures coming up, and I think these two are definitely two games that we have to be targeting full points from. The sort of games that Hibs historically kind of chip up in. You know, we look at it and go, there's 6 points there, and you know, we maybe get 4 or we get 3 or we get none. But I think we saw last season that the teams capable of putting together a run. They're also very capable of winning these games, as much as I can be a wee bit flippant there. I think we've got to target 6 points. I mean, Dundee, particularly at home, I was at the game at Dens at the start of the season, and they were awful. They were such a bad team that day, Dundee. They saw nothing there from them that troubled me. And I know they beat Celtic since, and they've drawn with Rangers. But I look at them and I don't see a team that's particularly good. And I think if Hibs turn up, we should have more than enough in the tank to get past them. Motherwell's a wee bit of a different proposition. I think they've underachieved in terms of the results against their performances. I've been quite impressed with them every time I've seen them. I think that'll be quite a tasty game that could go either way, but both winnable.
Yeah, I would certainly be getting plaudits. Motherwell can't say the same for Dundee. Therefore, they are rooted to the bottom of the table. So it is one of those where I think anything less than 3 points in this situation would be pretty unacceptable. I have done Dundee a real disservice there. They are not bottom of the league. Livingston are bottom of the league by a single point. But I think the general thrust of the point stands. I think anything less than 3 points would be unacceptable for David Gray. And he's got, it was a really good performance last time out at St Mirren. 3-0 victory there, first win there for a few years. Kind of everything you want in an away performance. Would you, depending on availability, would you be tempted to go with the same team again? Because I know he made changes in the sense that, Thibaut Clichy came out for Martin Boyle. What would you be tempted to keep it as is if everybody was available to you?
Yeah, I would go with the same team. I think the players deserve it. I think this is one of the things. If you're a manager and you want to have players sort of behind you, I think when the team plays well, players have to be able to keep their place and have that trust. And it means that there's that incentive for them to play well again against Dundee. I think if they're in and out of the team, no matter how well they play or what the results are, then that could be harder for them to kind of get behind what the manager's doing. So I think if you've got a winning team and everybody's fit and available, then by all means stick with it and see what happens.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree if everybody is available. So we'll find out more about that tomorrow. David Gray will be doing his pre-match press conference. We'll get an update on who's fit. Obviously, a lot of players have been away, some further distances than others in this international break, and that's always a consideration when the domestic football resumes again. But I think there's plenty in that squad who are well used to dealing with it by now. And as you said, you touched on the game at Motherwell there on the Tuesday. I mean, been getting a lot of plaudits, as I said, for the style of play. Maybe not the results to back it up, but it feels like that could be we're not going to tempt fate here, tempt it into a terrible goalless draw on a cold Tuesday night at the end of November. Feels like it could be quite an open and entertaining game, that one. If it's not, if I'm not tempting fate too much by saying that.
You will have killed it now, obviously, but I don't know. I mean, potential for another 6-6 there. Sorry for opening old wounds there for anybody that's listening, but Motherwell have been in some high-scoring games. I mean, they obviously got hammered for St Mirren in the Cup semi-final. Did the 3-3 at Tynecastle as well, which I think was an interesting sort of measure of where Motherwell are, because they sort of raced into a 3-goal lead there and then chucked it away. You know, the goalkeeper chucked a couple in, and I think that sort of encapsulates what you see with Motherwell at the moment. Is I think they're very capable of coming forward, but defensively they look a bit vulnerable, and I think Hibs are a bit more steady at the back than that. So I think if we can contain them and have a good defensive game, I think we've got enough going forward to trouble them.
Yeah, aye, absolutely. Just before we go, actually, just to touch on, I mean, it's getting into somewhat old news territory now, which is why I'm leaving it to the end. But just because we've not had Matty on for a while, and actually I was off on holiday last week while all this was going on, so haven't discussed it on our YouTube channel, so I'm giving myself a pass for that. Just the news last week, the parting of the ways between Hibs and the Black Knights. What's your take on it, having had a week or so to sort of digest the news and everything that's come around it?
I think ultimately it's the right thing to happen. I think when you've got two sides who are so diametrically opposed on what they want, it's never going to work. So you're as well cutting ties early rather than sort of having that bad feeling dragging on for season after season with people trying to sort of have a bit of a power struggle over it. I think it's a wasted opportunity. I think when we got on board with the Black Knights, there was a lot of excitement. I think had there been a willingness to sort of really buy into what that looked like at the time, then who knows what we might have achieved. We did third without doing that. We might have been better, we might have been worse. You'll never know. But I also think the way that Bill Foley described what he wanted for the club, a feeder club that basically was there for the betterment of Bournemouth. I think Hibs were 100% correct to tell him to get stuffed for that. Hibs should be about Hibs. It should be about supporting our ambitions, to qualify for Europe or finish higher up the league than we do or win a cup. It shouldn't be about growing players for Bournemouth, who are a club who, if it wasn't for the billions ploughed into the English game, would be a lot smaller than Hibs. So I think Ian Gordon was right to do it. There was an interesting point made on one of our phone-ins that just about the ownership structure now, that before Black Knights, I think the Gordon family owned about 65-ish% of the club, and they now own 85%, so they have pretty much full control. I don't think anybody has a power of veto now over them, which I trust the Gordon family. I don't think they have any ill intent towards the club. I think they've shown themselves to be good owners so far. Not to say they haven't made mistakes, but I think their intentions are very good. But we're a bit at the mercy of whoever they sell to, because whoever they sell to is going to get the club lock, stock and barrel. So there's a wee bit of concern there. I mean, HSL massively diluted from their original position before the investment went ahead as well. So there's those wee kind of quirks to the story as well about how things have landed. But I think ultimately it's the right thing for Hibs, and I'm right behind the decision for it.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think, as you say, when the sort of the phrase feeder club starts getting bandied around, then it instantly makes people recoil. And I think that is an impossible sell for the Gordon family. Like, you cannot sell that vision to fans. I think, and especially as you say, in the way that Bill Foley was talking about it, and that everything would be geared up for the long-term benefit of Bournemouth when he was talking about style of play, talking about picking staff and stuff like. I think if you're part of a multi-club structure, then you could have. I think there's, in terms of feeder clubs, there's probably a spectrum there, isn't there? I think if you're part of the multi-club model, there will be an element of that to a certain extent, but it doesn't have to be the sort of all-encompassing definition of what most people would think is a feeder club, as in it's just completely set up to benefit the team at the top of the tree. There are shades of grey and maybe sort of levels of nuance, but I think in the way that Foley was talking, and certainly sort of noises that have come out as to why Hibs wanted to walk away from it, it seemed like that wasn't going to be the case, and there was never going to be any sort of meeting in the middle over that, because I think as you say, there is an element of missed opportunity there, definitely, with the sort of the resources, the expertise, that because obviously the Black Knights have come into Bournemouth and they've made them kind of part of the furniture in the Premier League now. They've gone from sort of trying to consolidate and stay in the division to now that they were. I mean, it was kind of far into last season. They still had a shout of qualifying for the Champions League. So there's obviously a lot right being done there. But at the same time, I don't think you can't just abandon your own club's values, the expectation of the fans, the history of Hibs, just to go on board with that, regardless of what it actually looks like. So yeah, I think in a sense, I completely agree with you that there is a missed opportunity there, but at the same time, also probably the right decision in terms of Hibs' long-term future, I would say.
I think what was strange about it is it looked like Hibs were never really bought into the idea of it. Like we never acted like part of a multi-club structure. Even the much discussed not listening comment from Bill Foley, which we later found it was related to Malky Mackay and David Gray, which was really the first opportunity that the club had to go and act in good faith to be part of that model, to say, right, let's see what's on the table. What does it look like if we go down the multi-club avenue? Who are we hiring, and what's the structure like? And we did our own thing there, and it clearly frustrated Foley at the time. And I think Hibs just always appeared to keep them at arm's length. There was stuff on, if you looked up the Black Knights website, they had a big bit about Hibs. If you looked at Hibs' website, there was very little there. They never spoke about it. We would occasionally reach out to Hibs and say, what's the script? And we never got anything back on it. It just seemed like a wee bit of a dirty secret for the Hibs side. It was so weird. And I think that's when you sort of see it was doomed to fail. There was never, aside from that initial couple of players that came when the investment was first announced, there was never any movement between the clubs with players coming. And aside from a pre-season visit down to Bournemouth, there wasn't really much coming back there either. So I just thought the whole thing was strange in hindsight. Like it just looked like Hibs. I don't know whether we needed the money and just agreed to whatever to get it, and then found ourselves in a position later on that we didn't need the money, so we could buy them out, or what.
Yeah.
It was just weird. Like the whole thing was just weird. None of it really makes sense.
No, it doesn't. As it always has been a bit of an odd situation. I've felt. I would agree with you on that. I don't know if it's one of those things where what was discussed and seemingly agreed upon in the negotiations turned out to be completely different once it's in practice, because I suppose that can happen. But I mean, I think the bottom line is it's all over. It would end up being a bit of a footnote, I think, in Hibs' history. And as you say, there is intrigue certainly as to where the club decides to go from here. But for now, we're going to park it there, because I think the sort of long term, that's probably a discussion for another day. We'll let Matty get on. But yeah, thank you for joining us, folks. Just again, if you've been watching us on YouTube and you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, do us a wee favour and hit that like and subscribe button. It lets us continue to grow the channel and to bring you more content. As I said, we'll be at the Hibs press conference tomorrow to speak to David Gray, and we'll be back at Easter Road on Saturday, and we'll be out at Fir Park on Tuesday night. So plenty of content to come on the YouTube channel and on hibsobserver.co.uk, so do keep an eye out for that. Matty, thanks for joining us as always. We'll speak to you again soon, and folks, thanks you for joining us as well. We'll speak to you again very soon, so take care and enjoy your weekend. Cheers.